Welcome back to the local healing house. Today, we have a word that might make you a little uncomfortable. Some will feel anxiety and some will feel happy. Today, we're discussing capitalism. Is it good? Is it bad? Should we celebrate it? Should we remove it? I've been doing the wellness industry for well over 20 years, and I've seen the start before we had things like Groupon and tech companies and coders. I was there before any of that. And I've seen how much our industry has changed from the big box to the big tech, leaving out the little providers and the small businesses. We've been washed away. But at the same time, we've gotten access to so much more than we could ever imagine in so many different ways. Even here today, this is because of capitalism. My mic, my camera, all of it. So, is this a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And what should we do about it? Welcome to the Local Healing House show, where we discuss women in business and often focus on wellness and the things that can make us better, support one another, and share our wisdom across the generation and ages. As we help to lead the next generation coming up, we can also learn from them and their tips and tricks. So join me today in watching the Local Healing House as we explore the world of women who lead and achieve and refuse to lose. So let's talk a little bit deeper about capitalism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I think about the question, is capitalism evil? I have to say no, because it's not capitalism that's the problem. Absolutely, we have to talk about exploitation, and we will get there. Capitalism at the core is simply an exchange. I will give you this in order to receive that. I will give you 1 hour of my time for, let's say, $60 back in the day. Now, I will give you 1 hour of my time for $100. And if that's too much for you, well, then I'm going to look for the next person. Capitalism can also look like this. Bobby down the road is giving you an hour of their time for $45. So if I want to stay in business, maybe I'll start doing 30. And then we have the race to the bottom, which we see so much in the beauty industry. Every new machine is really expensive, and within a few years, we're on to the next really expensive machine, the race to the bottom. That's when capitalism is really beneficial for the consumer. On the other hand, capitalism is the tool to help keep prices low if it is not interfered with. Capitalism can also be very destructive in some areas, such as we want to see everyone make $20 an hour. So I'm going to make a widget and all of my staff gets paid $20 an hour. Well, that same exact widget can be made overseas for 15 cents. In America, rightly so, and I'm not to disagree with you, we want health benefits, we want housing. God, we want food. How could you imagine that we want to make enough money to feed ourselves? We have student loans that we have to contend with. We have health insurance that we have to work with. 22 cell phones, 5 cars, 72 prescriptions and subscriptions, and the list goes on and on. So we want more and more and more, and we utilize our legal system in order to ascertain more. So now that $20 per hour product is actually costing us $45 per hour in order to produce because the consumer wants to see the person making this getting those benefits. We all shop ethically. Well, most of us at least. And until we're hungry and we want to go to McDonald's, then we don't care. And we don't care when we go to Amazon and instead of supporting that employee making $20 an hour, we're really happy to support the company who's using slave labor in order to make that same product for 50 cents. Now, I should be careful when I say slave labor because it may not necessarily be our traditional sense of slavery. Let's suppose you have someone who works in a factory and they're getting 50 cents a day, but they also live at the factory and have to pay 20 cents a day for a hammock. And then they have to pay 10 cents a day for their utilities. Let me tell you, this is actually happening in the United States, and companies are actually pushing for this in certain areas. Some companies in the United States are shipping in their own staff and giving them room and board to which they do have to pay. So the company is paying minimum wage because that's the law. We must do that. But the person who's here for 3 to 4 months to work in these environments is also paying some of this money back for a bunk bed with 4 to 5 to 8 other people living in that same exact room. And this is all disguised as a way to get staff because these companies complain that nobody will work for them because the American cannot work for minimum wage. So it's easier for some of these companies to import their own staff through these different mechanisms of, whether it's education or cultural events. They can bring in their own staff and not have to pay the American employee the $50 an hour that they need in order to sustain their own living. Capitalism can be great. But capitalism can also be very exploitative. We can stop our own culture by trying to take advantage of every single aspect. The corporation is no longer dedicated to their employees. They want, some of them, the burn and turn. Get in here, let us work you until you break, force you out before we have to actually pay for you to be broken. And then we're going to get on the new staff, the younger staff, the fresher staff, the staff that's going to literally sleep in snowstorms because it's better to sleep in a snowstorm than risk going home because I might not show up to work the very next day because now our roads are iced and closed down. But we don't have respect for the American employee when we're going to places to shop for things that are made overseas, that are made in ways that actually reduce the value of the American employee. So, what do? Do we retract all the benefits from the American employee so you can no longer have a 401? We're no longer going to give you benefits for having that advanced degree. What do we do in that situation? When our Big Macs are costing us $22 in order to drive through, and the person is asking for a tip. I went to get a coffee from a well known coffee shop, and I did not leave a tip. I went through a drive through. I ordered a coffee for $18. Actually, it was only eight. Milk and flavored water is now $8, and that's probably cheap where I'm at versus other places. I didn't leave a tip. So the cashier voided out that transaction and said, "You forgot to leave me something." And I said, "No, I didn't, because I don't tip in drive-throughs anymore. I used to, but we no longer live in a society where money is flowing free for everybody." COVID did me very well because during those times when the cities were closed down, everybody was in my town throwing their dollar bills everywhere. Everybody wanted their massage, everybody wanted acupuncture. Well, that's not happening now because other nations are saying, "Hey, if you fly to our nation, we will give you $800 round trips to anywhere you want in Europe." And guess what? Even I'm hopping on that. Capitalism works great when you want to get people in your town, in your community, and you're willing to subsidize the airports in order to bring people into your town and then add a 45% tax on hotels. Capitalism works great in many, many ways. You need to decide what part of capitalism you can be on. Capitalism fails when the government gets involved. When the government does things like what they've done with the health insurance. I do take insurance, kind of, because I really don't want to do it anymore. Because in my experience, what's happening is the person who gets a service, they're told, oh, in massage, government-based massage, you can get an hour massage. And they come in here and go, I'm getting an hour. And I'm like, oh, no, you're not. You're getting a 30-minute service. You have shoulder pain. We're focusing just on your shoulder. Why would I give you an hour? Because guess what? If I work an hour, I cannot afford to pay the bills because two things happen. One, I have to take time away from other people who are paying double that rate. Two, I can't afford to hire another person to come work with me because they want double that rate of what they get paid. And then the person is now angry and mad because guess what? Mary down the road is willing to do an hour for half the rates. Capitalism can work when we get competitive. But there's people like me who go, no, we're going to have a boundary. But what ends up happening is now the government no longer wants to pay, so they're going to ask this third party, why don't you make these payments? We'll pay you 80% of what we promised the providers. And that third party's like, zang. Yes, they're very happy to get that. Because what happens is now they're going to call me and go, well, we'll give you 50% and pay you today. Yeah, because some people are willing to accept that because they just want money in their pocket. Not me. I have to fight tooth and nail, hire a professional. Now I have to pay the professional 10% in order for them to go out and get that money. But the government also takes it another step. The government sets guidelines. Medicare will only pay X amount of dollars for this code. Now they just cut everybody off because they can't survive off of X. So what happens? Well, now you're going to get this little light and you're going to get this little prick and you're going to get this over here. And all of a sudden, the consumer or the recipient of healthcare is getting a lot of unnecessary services in order for that practitioner to pay their rent. I know several doctors who regret going into the medical field because they said it was not worth their time, it was not worth their education, it was not worth their life to become medical doctors. And one of my doctors that I used to work with actually left to go into finance. He was not 6'5" with blue eyes, but finance was his key to a better future. Our health industry is being destroyed because we got rid of capitalism. Instead of capitalism, we pulled in socialism, where the government now tells us what we're worth and how much we should get paid. And at the end of the day, what's happened? Now you have doctors who say, well, if you want to come see me, you have to pay me $10,000 a year, January 1st, $10,000 pay up, or I'm not going to see you. So the people who can afford it, they pay it and they get access to care. And those doctors don't care what your Medicare guidelines are. They don't care what they're going to get paid because they already got that money up front. Some of these insurance companies are so despicable that what they do is they tell the doctor, look, we're going to pay you $1,200 a year for this customer. If you see them, oh well. If you refer to them somewhere else, oh well. So now it's in the doctor's best interest to not even treat you because they lose money every time you walk in their door. Socialism could probably work in many, many ways. I don't know if it works in the American way, but what I know is we need one or the other. All insurance, all medical needs to be covered by our taxpayers or none at all. Because what we have right now is people playing games with patients. I had a personal situation where a doctor put me on a lot of medicine and I said, I'm not taking this. And that doctor said, no, no, you have to. And I said, I know how to read my lab work. My lab work, I do not have high cholesterol. So why are you giving me a statin? And I was told it's preventative. And I said, eating one less hamburger a week is prevention, not a statin. That's my personal experience, and that's because I know how to read my lab work. I do actually have a doctor title for a reason, even though I am an acupuncturist. Lab work is within my scope. So I didn't trust my doctor anymore because I saw my doctor prescribing things that didn't make sense to me. Why are you giving me all of this stuff that I might not need? I was never given an answer to that. Then I had a competing doctor come to me and say, well, they're really getting kickbacks. I don't know if that's true or not, because as far as I know, kickbacks are illegal. And we've been hearing a lot of things about doctors getting paid to do certain stuff. I don't know if that's true or not true. I actually prefer to think my doctor is working somewhat in my best interest and out of concern versus some deviousness. I think my doctor's a great human being, and I think my doctor does care very much. Perhaps we just are on a different side of that medical understanding, and that's okay. We do need to be aware as patients. I had a question. Why is it that one doctor told me I had a cyst on my um, adrenal glands, and another doctor said you didn't have it? Well, these are great conversations to have. And the fact that I do have access to a doctor if I want to wait 2.5 months, which is small town problems, then I can go to my doctor and ask those questions and start that process. Or I can walk away and just accept what one doctor says, everything's fine. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. But what I do know is when it comes to our health care, we really should reconsider what we're doing. Here's a case. Acupuncturist. A few years ago, they were all yelling Medicare for all. Acupuncture is covered by Medicare, but not when done by an acupuncturist. What's the problem and why? Well, acupuncture is seen as a tool to help control pain and it actually saves people money. And sometimes it can stop you from ending up on very bad medicine. I will say sometimes because, there's not one answer or solution for everyone. Acupuncture is one of the tools along with physical therapy. So when we had acupuncture get accepted, the thing was acupuncturists were not coded into be built in order to bill for Medicare. So this is coming along. Well, what happens is all those acupuncturists who were yelling Medicare for all turned around and said, oh, we don't want to get in Medicare because it doesn't pay enough. All of a sudden, we're now concerned with the low payments from Medicare. And now we realize as a profession, this actually doesn't suit us because we don't make enough money on Medicare. But yet, you want your doctors and your PTs and your OTs and your podiatrists, you want all of them to take payments that are too low in order to survive and run clinics. And you might not even realize that some of these doctors are not making money. And so they're teaching in order to subsidize their income. Some doctors are actually going and working in environments that they don't want to work in order to get student loan forgiveness. The problem when we start blending capitalism with socialism is we end up with a mishmash and everyone ends up failing. Everyone does. We gotta be one or we gotta be the other. I've had some of my friends from other countries, and I've always asked that question. What system do you prefer? You lived in the UK. You lived in the United States. What worked best for you? And the answer is not one nor the other. It's actually both. Both systems work great in certain situations. If you have a heart attack and if you have cancer, you want to be in UK. You want to be over in Canada. But if you sprained your ankle, you want to be in the United States. If you want to have autonomy over your health care, you want to be in the United States. And I found that to be unexpected because I expected everyone to say, oh, socialized medicine is 100% the best. I can tell you 20 years ago when I worked at a lymphatic clinic down in Hollandale Beach, Florida, and I had a lot of people from Canada coming in and getting treatment and paying out of pocket. And they all said, we were denied. We were denied the care, so we had to come to Florida in order to get that care. Capitalism, socialism. Sometimes one works, sometimes one doesn't work, but trying to blend them, it may not be the best idea. The other problem with capitalism comes with exploitation. If your entire reason for being in business is to be a serial killer in a corporation, maybe you're not actually killing people, but you're killing their dreams and their hopes, and you just want to make your numbers work, don't go into medicine and don't go into finance. Please, I don't know, go somewhere else. I don't know where you should go because capitalism, if it's not operating with moral and ethics, it will fail and destroy all of us. We must operate with ethics. Many years ago, I was a teenager. I worked in this one really big company that everyone knows about. And I was told you're going to be in the electronics department. And this is run by three people, one person to clean up and help, one person to also support and help, and one person always on the cash register. Well, within a few weeks, my teenager self was stressed out because I had people literally throwing things at me because I wouldn't open up a gate. And then I had other people screaming at me because they needed to know what the next Celine Dion CD was. And I can't answer that question, but it was that long ago. Then I had other people going, well, you really need to ring me up for 20 to 99-cent objects. And my boss told me it was more important to ring people up than to help people because the people who wanted help were going to stay, but the people who were paying needed to leave as soon as possible because we needed to capture their money and kick them out. This company got sued big time because what they did to us, and as a teenager, they would lock us into the store and clock us out and stand and watch as we cleaned while we were not getting paid. Eventually, that came back. The other thing this company did to me as a full time employee and as a teenager, I went to them and said, I'm going to fill out my insurance application so I can get insurance. I was so proud being a teenager and getting my own health care. And they said, oh, no, no, you have to come back on day 90. This is day 88. You have to wait a few more days. So I did. And I came in on my day off and I said, I'm ready to fill out the paperwork. And they said, oh, you can't do that today because they're out to lunch and then they have a meeting. So you're going to have to come back tomorrow on 91st. So I said, okay. And I came back on the 91st day. And you know what they said? No, no, we're not giving you health insurance because you missed the deadline that was on the 90th day. And I was really confused by this. Like, you gave me directions. I've been here multiple times. I have the paperwork filled out, but you're not going to let me have health insurance. Oh, absolutely not. They were not going to let me have health insurance, which is rather shocking because I was a teenager and nothing was wrong with me. In fact, the first time I had health insurance was at 40 years old because that was the first time I ever worked for a company that actually allowed it. And I was shocked. I was like, what do you mean? You're giving me health insurance and you're letting me? Shocker, because most massage therapists, we work usually 3 to 4 jobs. We might be working 60 hour a week at a location, but they are not going to give us health insurance and they're not even going to pay us minimum wage. I literally multiple times have had $0 paychecks because they were allowed to do that. Different states, different laws. From what I understand, in Florida, a massage therapist still makes $0 per hour. They only get commission and tip. So do remember that. So when I'm standing in line and I'm given an opportunity to tip, I most very often do tip because I understand what it's like to make no money. But nowadays, when tipped employees in this state are making $12 to $15 an hour, and now my food bill just went up 25%, and now a hamburger again is costing us $20. So now I have to give a $5 tip where 5 years ago that hamburger was $7 and I left a $4 tip. All of a sudden, all of our prices are going up. But not only that, again, exploitation is when I go to a restaurant and I order a lemonade. And this happened to me in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. I went to meet with one of my friends and we sat down and she wanted wine and I had some lemonade. 2 lemonades cost over $30. It is water with lemon and some sugar. $30. Oh my God. And you know what? I got the bill and there was a 4% kitchen staff fee. A 4% fee for the kitchen staff that did not make my lemonade. I was literally going there and having lemonade because I wanted it to be cheap because I didn't want to spend the money. So now I got to pay a bartender and Bob in the back who's making burgers for my lemon and water. And you want me to give everybody tips, but here's the thing. You're not allowed to argue this unexpected tax for the guy in the back who's cooking steaks. This restaurant has $100 steaks. They do. You're telling me that you cannot afford to pay your staff while serving $100 steaks in the community that has cows on every single corner. We literally in Colorado have festivals where we close down the roads because the cattle's got to get moved. We have cattle in the high countries. Have you heard the arguments with the wolves? The wolves are a problem because the ranchers have cattle everywhere. So you're getting access to the freshest and most local meat, and it's $100, and you still need to charge me an extra $4 on $100, not for the waitress who's making the $15 an hour now, but for the guy in the back. That doesn't make any sense to me. This is either people who don't know how to run businesses or people who want to be competitive with the guy next door who's selling his steak for $110. So, do you want to go for the $100 steak or the $110 steak? Well, capitalism, you're probably going to go for the $100 steak. So, you sit down and you read your menu and you get your $100 steak. And now you know you're going to pay the waitress $20 for your $100 steak. 20%. The waitress deserves it. And then what happens? You have to pay more money for hidden fees that we did not disclose to you in order to get your food cooked. Because for some reason, $100 does not cover the cost of a cook and a waitress anymore. In Colorado, we have some stupid laws. I agree that everyone deserves to be able to afford food and gas. In Colorado, we are nuts here. We're nuts. When I work a full-time job and my paycheck is $0 for 2 weeks of work because the deductions, state required deductions and federal deductions are more money than I'm making in a slow week because I only make $11 an hour at my W-2 job. $11 an hour plus a commission plus a tip. And my deductions can make my paycheck 0%. On average, my deductions are 50% of my pay. Now, in Colorado, they love taking money out of our paychecks. Let's count thy ways. We have city tax, state tax. We sometimes have you shopped on this block tax. Glenwood Springs, where there's a speed limit sign that says the speed limit is 12 and a half miles per hour. Yes, I will send you that photo. 12 and a half miles. And if you live here, you know what I'm talking about. You have a tax just for shopping in that one little shopping center. You have a state income tax. You have a federal income tax. Now you have a mandatory tax for short-term disability. That sounds great, except I actually did try to use that, and my employer gives me short-term disability for free. But I still have to pay this tax. And when I went to use it, and my gallbladder was taken out, and being a massage therapist at that location, I could not do the massage because that takes your core. So I was stuck in a situation where I was actually out of work for a while. It was non-stop fighting because the state promises you things like unemployment if you get laid off, short-term disability if you're in medical, but they don't actually want you to get the money. So they make you fight non-stop in order to get your benefits. So you could be working and get $0 paychecks because your health insurance federal required, your health insurance, your other insurance, your other insurance, and your other tax, and your other tax, and your other tax on that tax. Capitalism would be great if my employer was rewarded for giving me benefits and then I didn't need the state to dictate these additional charges on my paycheck, charges to which they don't want me to have because my employer already has that covered. I mean, I am fortunate that I have an employer that has that ability. Not all employers can do that. Right now, we are sitting in the hall of my clinic. I have 3 treatment rooms, a retail office, and a backspace. And I have this nifty little hallway. I cannot afford, as an employer, to give these things to people because they cost too much money for small businesses. So small businesses are in a very different situation than the large corporations. But you know where I can win? Capitalism. I can charge $100 for a service, and my boss has to charge $280 for a service because my boss has a really big fancy building and lots of things and people that he has to pay for. So my boss is going, I can't afford to pay you because it costs so much money to run this place. So capitalism is great because I can be competitive against them and say, hey, clients, come to my place. Now that doesn't happen because I literally work and live 2 hours away from each other because I'm here focused on this business, not their business. Their business is health insurance at 24 hours, which is great. Capitalism is great. When my boss needs to be competitive in order to keep staff, my boss goes, I'll give you health insurance at 24 hours. Because if I go up the road, I might make $4 more an hour. But I'm not going to get health insurance from them unless I work 40 hours. And as a massage therapist, we go, I'm not working 40 hours a week. I'm sorry, but that's a quick way to be destroyed. Even though we all work 3 or 4 jobs and I actually work 80 hours a week, yada, yada, yadas. But the thing is, my boss is utilizing capitalism in order to give me a benefit in order to keep me loyal to their brand. We will reward you through this great benefit because it offsets how much we're going to pay you in the long run. But they know it's more important for me to have health insurance because if I don't have health insurance, the last time I checked, it was going to cost almost $1,000 a month for my health insurance. At that point, I might as well not even have health insurance. And let's not discuss the deductibles in order to have $1,000 a month a health insurance policy plan. These are things that I don't even want to look into because I can just keep working 2.5 days a week, 10-hour days, and have health insurance. So what do? I keep working at this job. He keeps getting bodies to sit around for him because at the end of the day, 24 hours for health insurance is actually capitalism working in our benefit. But what's not working in our benefit is when our bosses can ship in their own staff from other countries. What doesn't work with capitalism is when our bosses tell us this is a three-man job, but only lets one person work in that department and locks them in and takes them off the clock. Capitalism does not work when we can have access to cheaper products made in other countries without our ethical backgrounds and requirements. Capitalism fails when you go for the $100 steak instead of the $110 steak and now found out that you had to pay slightly more money. Now, I guess if you do the math, the $100 steak is still cheaper than the $110 steak, but the $110 guy is giving you free bread and not additional fees on top. I actually went to a place where you have to cook your own food at your own table, and it was not Korean barbecue. I support Korean barbecue, it's great. So we went to this famous chain, my friend. I suckered her into this because she had no idea our veggie and cheese platters that we were going to have to boil ourselves was going to cost her well over $100. And I decided I'm going to stick it to my friend and I'm going to get this great meal. So we go to a place that does not cook your food, but brings you oil to your table and tells you to cook your own steak for 3 minutes until it's well done. And they charged us a 4% kitchen staff fee. Me and my friend will never go back there again. And I will never get lemonade again in Glenwood Springs. And I will ask for here on out, do you charge this fee? Because if you do, I'm walking away. I'm not going to keep my reservations. I'm going to go somewhere else because I'm not paying additional fees on top of tipping. That's ridiculous. I will tip my server. But let me tell you what else is happening with our servers around here. I was thinking I would probably make more money if I went and became a food server. And then I talked to someone and they told me they make over $1,000 a day in tips. And I went, oh my God, I think I'm going to come work with you. And they said, don't do it. Because by the time we're done tipping out the kitchen staff and the bartenders and the rest of the staff, we come home with $200. They're getting to keep less than 20% of their tips because they are required to give their tips out to everybody else. So if you happen to be at a restaurant and you notice nobody at that restaurant is a first English speaker, they're probably coming in from other countries and they're probably living on property. And that's because they're being required to give all of their tips away. so that way people can cook that $100 steak. That is so wrong on so many levels. One of the places I worked at, what they did is they charged a 22% gratuity automatically on my services. And we were told that we only get 17% tip. They told us, well, this is for the spa attendants, and the spa attendants work really hard. Well, at one point, every single person who lived in the United States was pretty much like removed from the front desk, from being spa attendants, from answering the phones. Everybody was being shipped in. So one of the guys from another country was complaining that he was scared because he had to work a second job while he was here on his educational experience to learn how to run management while he was actually being required to take out the trash for the spa. And I said to him, what do you mean you need another job? Don't you have a place to live? And he goes, well, yeah, that comes out of my paycheck. So, there's eight of us living on bunk beds in one room, and there's 57 of us living in a house together. And I still don't have enough money for food. And I said, but you have food being paid, you're part of your package. He goes, we're only allowed to get one plate, and they only let us to take small amounts of food. And I was there. And I saw I would come in with a plate and I'd have to give it to the lady at the little cafe stand, and she would go clink, clink, clink. And that's all you got, little clinks, little clinks, little clinks. Unless she thought you would marry her. If she could marry you, you would get clunks and clunks. All the hot guys had plates like this, and all the women had tiny little clink clink clinks. So I went, oh, so you were promised food, but at the end of the day, you don't get along with the lady at the cafe, which is very involved. So you're getting not enough food for someone who's working 16-hour days. And the answer is like, yep. So I'm hungry and I need to get another job, which he was allowed to do. So then I so stupidly said, but you get so much tip money. And he went, what do you mean? I don't get paid tips. What was happening? This is what was happening. Our customers were being charged a tip, and the state requires these students to get paid at least minimum wage. I think it might have been $15 an hour. So what was happening is our tips were being taken away and paid to them as minimum wage. They were not getting tips, and they weren't even being paid by the company. I was paying for that poor kid to live here and to take out that trash. He wasn't getting any education. Capitalism, when it exploits, is evil and should not exist in the United States because these kids were being exploited time and time again. And as soon as they found out that this was illegal, like at those waitress locations where people are being told that they have to give their tip money to the cook and to the manager, when that happens, we get destroyed as a nation because one, the Americans who know the labor laws are not willing to work at these places. If you're getting locked inside of a building as a teenager, being forced to clock out and scrub the floor, you're not going to have staff. And what's going to happen is your quality and your services are going to go down. Capitalism, when it works well, sells more. Last week, see my headphones? I wanted to buy the $1.99 pair of headphones. And I went to one of these big stores and I said, I would like to look at your headphones. And the guy didn't want to open up the case. He came over to the case and he goes, well, there's headphones over there. Why don't you go over there? Because I wasn't looking for gaming headphones where I have a little thing that comes out here and talk, 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 talk. I know that's not what I wanted. This kid didn't even want to open up this piece of equipment so I could take a look at what I wanted to get. So then I decided I'm going to go somewhere else. So I went to another big company. I drove literally an hour away to go to a big tech store with all the fancy tech stuff. And I was looking at now $300 headphones. And so I asked the kid about getting these headphones. And the first thing he says, oh, in order to use those, you need to buy an extra piece of equipment. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll go buy a $30 cord. Capitalism at its finest. Make them keep paying more. So I got the cord and then I said, well, I still need to look at the headphones. You know what he tells me? Oh, go to the cashier register. There's headphones up over there. So I went to the register and I looked at the line and it was like a 5 hour line. And when I tried to go up to the register to actually look behind the cashier, someone started mouthing off at me. And I was like, I'm just trying to look at the headphones, dude. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess it's fine. But don't forget the line is back there. I'm like, yeah, I see the line is back there. I just wanted a pretty color set of headphones. And at this point, I didn't care if it was 300, 199, or 599. And I went, you know what? I'm not buying these. So I took the $30 cord, I put it randomly down, and I walked out 2 stores. And I ended up with $19 headphones. $19 headphones is what I got. I was in the market for something far better, far fancier, and blah, 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 blah. But customer service was so bad that I couldn't get what I was looking for. I went into this really big box tech store 3 times last month. I went twice to buy a computer, and I walked out both times without a computer. I was even laughed at when I said I was looking to put a computer on a business credit. And the kid laughed at me, and so did the manager. And they went, wah, 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 wah. We only do that if you're buying lots of stuff. And I'm like, well, maybe I will be buying lots of stuff, but for right now, I need a computer and I need that to go across the country so someone can help me. And instead, I walked out. And you know what I did? I called Apple. And within 20 minutes, I had an Apple shipped out to my friend. So my friend has my Apple computer because my friend is helping me. Capitalism can destroy your company if you are so unwilling to train your staff in customer service because you will continuously lose money. You need your staff to feel rewarded within your company. And if your company's only concern is the bottom line, how much money can I make today for my own pocket today? You're going to lose your company. Case in point, a podiatrist I used to shadow, he refused to replace his x-ray machine. So the x-ray tech often took 3 to 5 x-rays before they got the right x-ray. And you know what she said? He would save money if he would replace this piece of broken equipment that's from the 1800s. The receptionist ended up quitting because he wouldn't reward her with a small 15% raise. Now, I understand everything in the medical field's going in many different directions, but the thing is he wanted me at his house to provide a $150 massage every single week. And he insisted on living in a penthouse. And he insisted on having a brand new car every single year. He was probably leasing. So he insisted on exploiting his own business for his own personal appearance. And at the end of the day, nobody wants to work for you if you're like that. And if they are working for you, it's because they're getting their rewards in other ways. Healthcare at 24 hours. Okay, that's a great deal. But what about stealing? How many people are taking stuff out of your company and selling it online? I don't know if staplers make that much money nowadays. I don't know. But what I can tell you is theft is one of those ways that your staff will get back at you if you're so obsessed with your bottom dollar that you're not willing to reward them for their hard work. They will make out with something. Your client list, your client list. Your employees will find a way to make it worth their while to stay if you're not willing to reward them. Capitalism works when everyone feels that they're being rewarded for that process. I have a family member who gets bonuses every year, and she's so excited. And she wants to know what these numbers are going to be, how much more they need to sell in order to get this bonus, yada, yada, yada. And she is driven for this bonus. She probably makes a lot less than she should, but she's very excited about her bonus. I have other companies that I've seen refuse to reward their staff members. And those companies always end up with far less qualified people who will refuse to open a little arm on a shelf in order to sell $199 headphones or the $300 headphones, and your customers will walk out. If you're in the service industry like I am, that's not an option. I have to keep my customers happy because they have to come back. And if they don't come back, I won't have a business. My business is based more on capitalism than on socialism because I am removing the insurance aspect of my company. I only have two insurances that I work with now. And while people are begging for their insurance companies, if I keep accepting that insurance company is only going to keep lowering. It becomes a game. Capitalism with exploitation will fail. Capitalism with credit cards at 33% will destroy our country. Banks who sell loans just so that way they can steal homes will destroy our company. Student loans, that's a form of socialism in my eyes. That is going to destroy our country. Because when you take the money out of the market and give it to the banks, so the bank, few guys can own their own jets and golf courses, we don't need that as a country. We need everybody making a little bit of money so they can afford food. Shocker. We want our wait staff to keep more money in their pocket because you know what that wait staff is going to do? They're probably going to leave that night and go drink somewhere, and they're going to go eat somewhere, and they're going to go have a good freaking night and go back to their roommates with three people living in a one-bedroom apartment because they're in their 20s and they're having a good time and they're spending all their money. God bless you. That's what you should be doing at 20, having a fabulous time. At 30, you should be more career oriented, and your employer, you should have a 401 and it should be going already. Congratulations. That's what you need. And hopefully, you're the boss at 40. Capitalism is great, but only if it's being operated through ethics. So, thank you very, very much for talking with me today and listening to my stories. I am full of stories, and we will hear many, many more. So, stay tuned. We're going to be doing some interviews coming up. One of my personal friends is going to be on the show, someone who I immensely love, and I can't wait to talk to them and share their life experiences with you. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's topic, and if you did, please like and share. If you didn't, well, like and share anyways, because we can always use more likes and more shares in this world. If you have a topic you would like to discuss with me, please leave it in the comments so that way I can read them and we can explore some of your ideas. I think that would be a great thing for all of us to do. So please join us. I am Dr. Murphy. I do own the local healing house, which is a personal wellness concierge program, and my own clinic for acupuncture and massage. So have a fabulous day and be the person who leads and achieves and refuses to lose. Bye.